Deus, nos salutaris nostre, Dominex meus, Dominex Deus, Dominex meus, Deus noster, Dominex est, Rabamandemi, Arcangeli, Ave Pateti, Ladamontem, Domino Maestatis,
Hey, how's everybody doing? Hope you're having a fantastic day. It is Friday, August 23rd, and I think we're back. So this is an unusual Friday night stream, but I just saw something that I had to deal with. And I say have because I really hate this issue because usually this is framed among online communities in this weird way of a quote age of consent and like what age of consent is, and it's put in such a weird way of whether X YouTuber or Y YouTuber who was DMing a 17-year-old was actually bad or not. But obviously, St. Thomas was treating a completely different issue. And the way in which this has been brought up in the Christian-Muslim debate is that often a certain issue called sacramental validity in medieval and even contemporary canon law and among contemporary canon lawyers is brought into a certain critique that's given of the Prophet Muhammad, or I would say the so-called Prophet Muhammad, obviously. A critique of him in a certain marriage that he had contracted and consummated at a unusually young age. I know there's historical dispute, blah, 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 whatever. But the critique isn't necessarily about the validity of the marriage. It's about the sinfulness of such a union. So different questions are being asked. And I know all of these categories of sacramentology and of canon and civil law are kind of boring. But it is something that I myself have read about because the medievals talk about this. So it's something which is necessary to treat. So I'm going to kind of dive right into it. I'm going to respond to the chat and stuff like that. I don't know how long I'm going to be on. I kind of, don't feel the best right now. So I kind of want to get this done with and get along with my evening. But the reason I hate discussing this so much is everybody who's treating this issue is treating it under like the age of consent thing. And if you're really, really, really concerned with the age of consent, it usually means that you're kind of a weirdo creep guy. Sorry, that's just almost every single case. You have somebody who's like really like, we should lower the age of consent. It's usually somebody who's kind of like a creep and a weirdo. But really what we're talking about here is we're talking about legal categories of validity. So I'm going to get up a good old, I love it, a good old Google Doc whiteboard so I can get your notes on the screen, definitions, stuff like that, so you guys can keep track of everything I'm saying. If you misunderstand anything, I will. Okay, let me change the size here. I will make sure I go into the chat, look, respond, explain things if necessary, because this is obviously an extremely delicate issue, and I don't want anybody to misunderstand anything that I'm saying on this question, because this is a very delicate, very complicated issue of legality, laicity, prudence, sinfulness. I mean, there's a million different things that come into play. And if you don't come into this question understanding simple things like invalidity, what an impediment, a sacramental impediment is, what a defect is, in a technical term, what a defect is. If you don't understand all of these things, you're going to read a text like Jake does. And I mean, that's just how I guess you could say a normal 21st century cradle Catholic who didn't get much education in uh, the theology of the Catholic Church, you would expect them to read it like this. But that's not at all how you're supposed to read it, because there's a very large medieval context. I actually read a few of the medieval sentences on commentary sentences on the fourth book of sentences, in order to look at what other authors had said on this. It's pretty universal, and as I mentioned earlier on Twitter, actually, when these Muslims are bringing forth these objections to medieval authors, they don't even need to go to medieval authors, because the principles that St. Thomas lays out then are actually the same exact principles that are applied in marriage tribunals to this day. So this is the contemporary practice of the Roman Catholic Church when it comes to applying canon law to these situations. So I want to make that clear. This isn't something that's unique to St. Thomas. And also what I wanted to bring up is a lot of people were pointing out that Jake was quoting from what's called the Supplementum. So as many people know, St. Thomas died while writing the Summa. He was partway through the treatise on penance when he died, so he never got to a mature treatment on the issue of matrimony. So his students, his disciples, wanted to complete the Great Summa. So what they did is they took from the fourth book of sentences that he had written as a Bachelor of Theology, which would have been in his late 20s, early 30s, that he wrote this, and it basically inserted these into the Summa at the end of the Summa in order to have a complete treatment of theology. So a lot of people were saying, whoa, this is from the Supplementum. St. Thomas didn't even write it. That's not entirely true. And actually, I will be quoting from the Book of Sentences rather than the Supplementum, just because I want to, I guess. I could quote from the Supplementum, but I'm not going to. Okay, so first we need to distinguish 4 different judgments: valid, licit, prudent, and moral. Okay? So when you have a sacrament, and I'll take it off of the marriage thing and I'll put it into another context. Let's think about ordination. So ordination to the priesthood. What makes a valid ordination to the priesthood? A valid subject to receive ordination? Well, this actually is above the age of reason. So if you have an 8-year-old boy who is above the age of reason and he's consecrated as a bishop, he actually validly receives holy orders. Okay? And this is a judgment which flows from the nature of the sacrament. So that is the judgment right there. Okay, so now when it comes to licit, what makes a licit consecration of a bishop? Licit is in accordance with canon law, and for marriage also what's going to matter is civil law. So to break the licety, there can be what's called a dispensation, but to break the licety would be to go against the regulations, which are called positive regulations or regulations of positive law. So actually in the text that Jake read, it mentioned positive law, and this is what this is talking about. So if memory serves me right, the 1983 Code of Canon Law, it's either 30 or 35 for bishops. So in order to have a licit age for this, you would have to be above 30 or above 35. Okay? And now prudent. So prudent means in accordance with basically getting the end. So in accordance with getting the end. So let's say that the laws allow for the ordination of a 22-year-old priest, as they have in some times. It's not necessarily prudent to just put that in as like, okay, we're going to ordain everybody at 22. There's some people who need more years of maturation in order to prudently, ordain them. Now, moral, in accordance with the moral law. So in some cases, you have a, let's say your 8-year-old bishop right there. That not only would be imprudent, that would be immoral. Because there is a grave, or even if there's a light, that would be a venial sin. But for an 8-year-old, obviously, there would be a grave contradiction to the end of the episcopate. So when it comes to prudence and morality, this has to do with the end of the thing. When it comes to licety, it has to do with the law. When it comes to validity, it has to do with the essence of the thing. So validity is asking whether the thing exists. Laicity is asking whether it is in accordance with positive precepts, positive laws. And obviously, breaking the Laicity, depending on the degree of breaking, would also be immoral. So you see how there's some overlap here. Prudence would be breaking the moral ability to acquire an end, and to break the morality would be a grave contradiction. It would be, rather than merely being a less optimal achieving of the end, it would actually be going against the end of the thing. Okay, so those are the four categories that you need to know. Now, when it comes to marriage, things are a bit unique because you actually have three stages. So the first stage is betrothal. The second stage is what's called ratum tantum, which basically means only ratified. And the third stage is ratum et consumatum. Ratum et consumatum. So betrothal, that is merely a kind of legally binding promise. So let's say you have the way that it would kind of work, I guess, in a medieval context. Betrothal is not engagement, by the way. They're two different things, because betrothal has some sort of legal force. So you need an excuse to get out of it. But excuses, they're very easy. Let's say there's a promise of children of wealthy noblemen. One of them's 10, one of them's 11. And then when they get to the age in which they want to actually contract the marriage, which would usually be somewhere in the late teens in a medieval context, 17, 18, even up to early 20s, that was quite normal. Let's say there's a grave moral defects in one of them, or even light moral defects or some sort of incompatibility. You just need some sort of reason. And even in some cases, if there's no reason, you could be, for example, sued in a civil court for this. So that's what betrothal is. Betrothal, all that requires is that one be of the age of reason. So this is why you get medieval authors talking about 7-year-olds can contract betrothal, a legal promise in the future to get married. But obviously, 7, they're just stating that because that's above the age of reason. In the same way that we would say a 7-year-old above the age of reason could be consecrated to the episcopate. So I'm gonna check the super chats that I'm seeing come across. I'm gonna check them after I explain the last two. Okay, so when it comes to ratum tantum, so only ratified, this is kind of a weird purgatorial state that a lot of people aren't actually aware of. So there's two stages, and this is kind of reflected in ancient Jewish practice. Betrothal kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's in Justinian's code. This wasn't a traditional, to my knowledge, patristic thing, or definitely not an ancient Jewish thing to have this kind of legally binding promise of betrothal thing. That's not really kind of legally binding, but not really legally binding at all, because you can just get out of it easily. So the only ratification, this is when you actually have an act of the will, i.e. consent. Because we would say the form of the sacrament of matrimony is consent. So you're able to consent to the marriage. So the consenting to the marriage, that is able to happen at an age of mental and bodily maturity. So this age of mental and bodily maturity is usually stated at 12 for girls and 14 for boys. That's the ancient statutes. Recently, it's 16 for boys, 14 for girls in the 1983 Code of Canon Law. So that's the only ratification. So what's interesting about this is a ratum tantum marriage. Or it's also called ratum sed non consumatum. That's another legal term for it. These can actually be dissolved because, as we know, marriage is indissoluble. When you have the sacrament of matrimony, it's something which can't be dissolved. But in these cases, where you have the ratification of the marriage, but you don't have the consummation of the marriage, which there would be, in many cases, a time period which would occur between the two. Between these two, so for example, if you happen to have a valid marriage which was contracted, and you're on your way home that night with your newly married spouse, and before the marriage is consummated, there's a car accident and your spouse is now like brain dead. They're not actually dead. So the marriage hasn't been dissolved in fact, which would happen with the death of the spouse, but they're brain dead. In that case, there has been no consummation, so the marriage can actually be dissolved. Or there's like a kind of story that I've heard in trad circles, kind of making fun of the old way of thinking, where there was a young woman who contracted a marriage with a young man, and that woman, they went home and to the consummation of the marriage, and the woman found out what intercourse was, and she was so horrified by the notion that she went running, and they got the marriage dissolved because she was so horrified by the idea of consummating the marriage in that way. So when it comes to these cases, these aren't actually sacramental impediments, because the sacrament has actually been carried out. This is actually a marriage which is sacramentally valid and carried out, but the church has the power to dissolve it. Okay, then we have a third category, ratum et consummatum. In this, when it comes to this third category, this requires an act of, and it's called by canon law, this is canon law, not me, natural intercourse. Natural intercourse. So, cover the kids' ears right now. Or I hope you're not listening to this stream with your kids. But if you're particularly, disposed towards not wanting to hear these things, cover your ears. But if you have a case where, let's say there is onanistic intercourse occurring or some other sodomitic act, in these cases where there isn't a natural and procreative act of the marital use, then that actually wouldn't be consummation. Consummation requires a natural intercourse with its procreative end, and that the marriage goes from ratum tantum and therefore can be dissolved to ratum et consummatum. And in ratum et consummatum, in this, they actually cannot dissolve the marriage at this point. So the marriage is forever till the death of the spouses. Okay, so there's another category of things that you guys need to understand. Again, I'm not sure, Jake. I'm trying to set the page set up to pageless. There we go. It's much better. So there's a third category that needs to be understood, and this is what are called impediments. So impediments, and these are things that aren't really thought of by those who do not have any sort of knowledge of canon law or knowledge of sacramentology. So with impediments, there are impediments on the one hand, which are prohibitive impediments. And there are, on the other hand, what are called nullifying impediments. There's two categories of impediments. So these are legal. So these are basically just immoral, illicit, blah, 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 blah. And nullifying impediments would actually validate the sacrament. So the sacrament wouldn't even incur with a nullifying impediment. So, for example, let's say you have consanguinity. So consanguinity is a close familial relationship. This would actually be right here a nullifying impediment. So the sacrament actually wouldn't even take place. So let's say you have, on the other hand, a prohibitive impediment. Let's say, for some example, Germany had at one point in its ecclesiastical law that males had to actually be 21 before that was the marriageable age in Germany at one point, 21 years old. If a 20-year-old happened to get married, this would not be something which would invalidate the marriage. This is actually be something which is prohibitive. So it would merely provide some sort of immorality, some sort of illicity. It would provide basically legal troubles. That's what it would provide. Okay. So all of these categories in mind, all of them in your brain. Now we can go through and I guess I'll give you kind of the cheat code ahead of time. St. Thomas is actually treating basically the idea of, in what case does age become a nullifying impediment? So let's say you have a betrothed couple. Let's say you have a ratum tantum, because this sort of idea of ratifying the marriage was actually upon the condition, the moral condition. You can read, for example, the Catholic Encyclopedia on this. It was on the condition that it would not be consummated. So if consummation were to occur, that would be an immoral act. Okay. So when it comes to the question that St. Thomas is asking, he's asking, okay, let's say, and obviously this is an act which is natural. It's something which is procreative. It's not like an instance of sexual assault, for example. This is a question of a consensual act, like however you want to frame it, like that. At what age, when this occurs, does the marriage become indissoluble? Insoluble. Sorry. When does it become indissoluble? So if you have a merely ratified marriage and both parties are 20 years old and they consummate the marriage, does that make the marriage indissoluble? Well, obviously we can all say in that case, like, yeah, it makes the marriage indissoluble. But what is that sort of objective standard to where this fact of the indissolubility of the marriage occurs? What St. Thomas says, and what he's answering these questions, he says this occurs at the age of bodily and intellectual maturity. So when you have this merely ratified marriage and those of that age consummate the marriage, then in this case, this marriage becomes becomes indissoluble. That's what it's treating. It's not treating whether this is prudent. It's not treating whether this is moral. Because St. Thomas actually has things to say about when this should occur, when one should be in the role of parents, and so on. We'll go over that. But this is just contextually what St. Thomas is treating here. Okay, we're all understanding. Okay, good. So now, before I'm going to go into the text of St. Thomas now, we'll go through all of these because he has a lot to say. But he just has a lot to say about this. But I'm going to go into the super chats. Okay, so dude, come on, no, Mr. Riveron, we're not doing that to Jake. Okay, so Benjamin, he asks, can a confirmation be licit and valid if the person confirmed is in a state of mortal sin, as well as being an unbeliever? Well, in that case, the confirmation would be valid. It would just be illicit because one of the it would be sacrilegious, actually, because any sort of sacrament performed when one is in a state of mortal sin would be one which is sacrilegious, but it would be valid. Okay, so let me continue. There's a few texts from the sentences commentaries that are very helpful. So let's go into them. Okay. There's actually a very universal, uniform reading from the medievals from all that I saw. So the first one is going to be from the Book of Sentences, Book 4, Distinction 25, Question 2, Article 1, second question of that article. So let's pull that up. So, so talking about the receiving of holy orders, but this treats the reception of sacraments in general, the age of sacraments in general. So it says, to the second question, it should be said that youth and other defects that take away the use of reason present impediments to acting. Okay, so what is he talking about here? He's talking about what impedes the validity of the sacrament. So these are talking about what we went over earlier. So these are talking about nullifying impediments. And so all the sacraments that require an act of the one receiving them, like penance, so marriage and the like, do not apply to such people. But infused powers come before acts, as is the case with natural powers, even though acquired powers are come after acts. Now, if what comes after is removed, what comes before is not taken away. Consequently, children and others who lack the use of reason can receive all the sacraments in which no act is required of the recipient as necessary to the sacrament, but a spiritual power is divinely given. So this would, for example, be baptism. This would be confirmation. This would be the Eucharist. This would be extreme unction. All of these sacraments can actually be given to infants. This distinction being granted, however, the age of discretion is required in minor orders out of respect for the dignity of the sacrament, but not of the necessity of a precept, nor as necessity to the sacrament. Therefore, some people, if there is a need and hope of their advancement, can be rewarded to minor orders before the years of discretion without sins. Let's talk about minor orders, which minor orders would be like acolyte, lector, things like that. And they do receive holy orders, for although they are not fit at the time for the offices, they are committed to them. Nevertheless, they will be rendered fit, blah, 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 so on and so forth. This is merely just talking about the difference between those which require an act, those which do not require an act, which, since the form of matrimony is consent, requires some sort of act. Okay, so that is age in general. Again, this is talking about validity and impediments. Okay. So now, St. Thomas, just because Jake seems to have a very high bar for proof, which, that's fine and all. Here is where he goes into impediments of marriage in general. So if Jake wanted to find more about what impediments are in order to contextualize what he's reading, to actually understand what he's reading, he would do well to read about what impediments are. So let's go down. So I answer that in marriage, there are certain things that are of the essence of matrimony. So this would be matter and form, and certain things that belong to its solemnity. So these would be certain positive precepts, for example. An example for a different sacrament would be belongs to the essence of the sacrament of the Eucharist, that the matter be present, bread and wine, the form, the words of institution. These would be required for the essence of the sacrament. But obviously, doing it on a plain wooden table, or, if you somehow threw the sacrament into the dirt or something like that, that would be, sinning against the sacrament, still be a valid sacrament. But these things would make these illicit, sinful, and so on and so forth, depending on the gravity of the offense. And since when those sacraments are removed that are not necessary for the sacrament, the validity of the sacrament remains. Therefore, impediments which oppose those things that are of the solemnity of the sacrament do not obstruct it from being a valid sacrament. So here are these two categories that I went over earlier. Those are the ideas of a prohibitive verse, which would oppose the solemnity, or the laicity of the sacrament, which is kind of what we call it now, versus nullifying. And these nullifying would oppose the validity of the sacrament. So again, these are very important things to keep in mind. St. Thomas, he's not treating whether the solemnity is carried out. So if Jake wanted to prove his whole thesis about St. Thomas and connecting it with the case of Muhammad, he would need to look at whether St. Thomas talks about prohibitive laws, which implicitly throughout his works, he does talk about prohibitive laws when it comes to marriage. But that's what we need to actually go into. So the critique of Muhammad, to my knowledge, again, as I've said, I haven't been incredibly invested in this particular apologetic, but the critique isn't about a speculative question about the validity of Muhammad's marriage. It's about the sinfulness of it, that it is something which is sinful because it is in opposed to the ends of the sacrament, even while, I don't know any of the facts of the matter. I don't know whether it was valid or not. That would require some study, and so on and so forth, with the different historical events and blah, 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 blah. That's what we're not concerned with. This is what Jake is bringing up, a text concerning the validity. That was never the question which was being treated. It wasn't about the validity. It was actually about the laicity, about the decorum of the sacrament, about the possible imprudence, which obviously in this case, I don't think it implies imprudence, but actually sinfulness of the carrying out, which I think the implication which is being drawn by us is that, or by our apologists, by Jay or whoever else, is that this is sinful, not merely that it's imprudent, which is what I meant to say. Okay, so let me grab that. Ask Nathan if he can get his dad to debate Lofton. That would be so funny. That'd be amazing. Okay, so let us continue now. And such things are said to impede the contracting of marriage, but they do not invalidate the contract. For example, the prohibition of the church, the period of the holy days. And this is where we get the verse. Though the forbidding of the church as well as the holy days impede it from happening, they permit those who have been joined together to remain bound. Okay, however, impediments that go against the things that are essential to matrimony prevent it from being a valid marriage. So again, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about whether it's valid. It's nothing to do with the critique of whether it's sinful or not, which I'm going to reiterate over and over again, obviously. Therefore, they are said not only to impede the marriage from being contracted, but to invalidate the contract. And these impediments are the following: error, condition, so on and so forth. So blah, 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 blah. Impede the idea of being incapable of intercourse. That has to do with the age of bodily maturity, which is what's being treated. Let me see if he actually explicitly talks about age here. It's actually treated right next to the condition of servitude, which is kind of funny. Yeah, it's the impotence. The impotence is what's being treated. Age is under impotence. So technically, this would also apply to like a 40-year-old who is impotent and they cannot carry out the use. This person's marriage would be invalid as well. Okay, so that's what I wanted to go in with. That text, just the idea of an impediment in general, just for Jake to understand. I'm not making up any of this stuff. So let's go to a different text. This is the age of betrothal, because remember, betrothal, that's that kind of legally binding whatever. This isn't about the actual contraction of the sacrament or not. This is a completely different question. Okay, so I answer that 7 years is the age determined reasonably enough by law for contracting a betrothal. For since the betrothal is a certain promise of future things, as was said, it is necessary that it be between those who in some way are able to promise such things, which is only those who have a certain prudence concerning future matters. By this certain prudence, basically means a certain knowledge of practical action for the future, which requires the use of reason, in regard to which 3 stages are noted according to the philosopher in the Ethics. The first is when someone neither understands by himself nor can receive from another. So this would be under the age of 7. Second stage is when a person can gain understanding from another, but by himself is capable of understanding. This is 7. And the third is when a person can both receive from another and consider things for himself. And this is 14, by the way. And then he goes on to say, well, actually, when it comes to, actually, I'll just read this whole thing, because this talks about the end of the third 7, which is very relevant for prudentially and in a non-sinful manner contracting. Well, prudentially more so, but also in a non-sinful manner contracting and consummating the marriage. It says, and since reason in human beings grows strong gradually as the movements and fluidity of humors are quieted, therefore, and that's all medieval science stuff, a person occupies the first state of reason before the age of 7 years. For this reason, he's not qualified for any contract at that time, including a betrothal. So he can't even make a legal contract. But a person begins to arrive at the second stage at the end of the 7 years, which is why this is also the established time for a boy to go to school. But someone begins to arrive at the third stage at the end of the second 7 years, so 14, as concern those things which pertain to his person, regarding which his natural reason develops more quickly. But as concern those things which are outside him at the end of the third 7 years. So notice, but as concerns those things which are outside him. Because when it comes to the validity of matrimony and the actual consummation, this happens at bodily maturity. But when it happens to the actual prudential carrying about of marriage, which would require certain intellectual, rational maturity to be able to govern a household and all of that fun stuff, to be able to govern children and procreation. This is actually very often said to be at the end of the third 7 years, or even for some medievals when it comes to the 25th year. And therefore, before the first 7 years, a person is not qualified to make any contracts. But at the end of the first 7 years, he begins to be capable of promising something in the future, which is going to be betrothal, especially about those things that reason naturally inclines to him. But he's not capable of obliging himself with a perpetual bond, for at that point, he does not have a firm will. And thus, at such an age, betrothals may be contracted. But at the end of the second 7 years, he can already oblige himself in those things which pertain to his own person, whether to the religious life or to the conjugal life. This is going to be the mere ratification of it. And after the third 7 years, he can also oblige himself regarding other things, according to the laws of the power of disposing of him his own things is established him after the 25th year of age. So again, this age in the early 20s. And what's very interesting is when you look at the 25th year, this is going to be the disposing of other rational creatures. This is actually why the priesthood is at the 25th year. And also at the, if you kind of track back 7 years from 25, what's 25 minus 7, 18. And that's going to be, or 17 if you count the gestation period. That's going to be if you consummate the marriage when your children are your first child ordinarily is going to be at the age of reason at 7, and you're going to be disposing him for the future. So this is actually naturally patterns on when medieval marriages, outside of weird cases with nobles, very weird cases with nobles when you have on the younger end of things, and also you would also have like clerics at this age, but this was spoken out against during this time. But it makes perfect sense. This maps home perfectly with ordinary medieval practice, actually. Okay, so do I continue? Nope, that's about the end right there. And there's going to be a third one. And this is going to be the one that Jake is going to point to, which is validity and consummation. Remember, the important thing is about whether the marriage can be dissolved or not. When you have that consummation, which is a valid consummation, which is going to be, it has to be procreative, so there has to be bodily integrity. There can't be any sort of impotency, which occurs. This is going to be at that age of bodily maturity when we make the judgment of validity. This isn't making a judgment of whether it's sinful or not. This is making a judgment of whether it's prudent or not, or anything like that. Okay, so whether a defect of age impedes marriage. Again, what's an impediment? It's a sacramental impediment. What does a sacramental impediment have to do? It doesn't have to do with necessarily decorum. He's going to be asked about validity here. Okay? So let's read this. I answer that because it is made in the mode of a kind of contract, marriage is subject to the ordering of positive law, just as other contracts are. So this right here is why, for example, and I'll read out a very interesting list of the way in which various different countries, very different bishops' conferences have brought about the positive law here. But this is why you get, some countries actually having as high as like 20 and 21 years old. That's how they dispose positive law in this case. For this reason, according to law, it is determined that before that time of discretion, and this law is from Gregory IX, it is determined that before that time of discretion, in which parties can sufficiently deliberate about marriage and render the debt to each other, so the rendering of debt to each other, this would be at the age of bodily maturity, marriage cannot be contracted. And if this rule is not followed, the marriage is invalidated. So notice, what kind of impediment are we talking about? We're talking about the impediment which invalidates. Now, this time is typical, 14 years of age for males, but 12 years for females. And the reason for this was given above in distinction 27, question 2, article 3, which we already read, actually. For although the precepts of positive law follows what happens for the most part, if someone should arrive at the required maturity before the time is established, such that the strength of his nature and his reason should supply the defect of age, the marriage is not dissolved. What is the dissolving of the marriage talking about? This is talking about the only ratified, the ratum tantum. This is what this is talking about. This marriage can't be dissolved. But if in another, let's say, case, before this bodily maturity is reached, they attempt to consummate the marriage, that would be not a consummation. That would only be an attempt, which would be immoral. We can label it all those things, but the main concern here is whether it actually would be a valid consummation to make the marriage indissoluble. Again, this is what it's about. If you knew about sacramentology, if you knew about canon law, if you knew about ratification versus consummation, you would know all of these things. But Jake doesn't know any of these things. So this is why, he's stating things like this. Let's continue. And therefore, if the parties contracting before the age of puberty were joined sexually, so this would be the consummation, before the age established, the marriage would nevertheless stand as indissoluble, because positive law merely follows averages. But if there's bodily maturity before this age, then it would be dissoluble, because it would be merely ratified, not consummated. Okay. So now when it comes to issues of prudence and issues of this sort, issues of whether, when it would be good, and great. St. Thomas doesn't really treat this explicitly much, but we saw in earlier when he's talking about the disposing of one's own affairs, the disposing of the affairs of others. He's going to give general guidelines for this, as other medievals like St. Albertus Magnus, St. Bonaventure give. And I'm sure there's other medievals as well that are giving these that I haven't come across. So we actually get some indication, as I mentioned earlier, in Distinction 27, Question 2, Article 2. This is also the same sort of indication is given in his Against the Impugners of the Religious Life. So let me pull this up. Chapter 13, number 12. So here he says the 10th objection, namely that parents can annul the vows of children not yet arrived at the age of puberty, carries no weight. The fact that an engagement may be broken does not make such an engagement sinful. So this is about betrothal and such. It would be equally reasonable to say that whatever minors, that is, persons under 25 years of age, so this is canonical minors right here, may do to the detriment of their own interest is unlawful, because anything that they lose can be completely restored to them. Hence, children commit no sins by taking a vow to go into religion or by assuming the religious habit without their parents' permission. Even though such vows can be annulled, were they to commit sin by taking such vow, the fact would be noted by the canons and grant faculties to parents to dissolve the vows of children. So again, we get this this marriage of the age of minority. In this age of minority, it has to do with the disposing of what happens with others. Okay, so now let's go to do you believe it was immoral for someone at the age of Aquinas to consummate a marriage at age 12? Yes. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Because the age of disposing the affairs of others is 25. So how are you supposed to dispose of of your household? That'd be extremely stupid to do something like that. You wouldn't be able to dispose of your household. So again, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so now let's go into St. Albert, because St. Albert, the teacher of St. Thomas, actually goes into this a little bit more explicitly. Okay, let me bring it up. Let me bring up the thing again so I can show you guys the quote, because it's my translation. And this is from his book of Sentences. And then after this, I want to go into some of the positive regulations. I can deal with any comments after that. It's basically all I have. 18th year in which the first signs of adulthood begin. Thus, therefore, it is determined that the orders of things like betrothals, the generation of peace, the discernment of spirituality, and so on are directed by a sufficient judge for the family and have perfect knowledge and instruction of others. And therefore, the age of betrothal is determined to the marriage of a girl at 12 and the boy at 14, whose reason is also assigned. The entrance into religion at the 18th year, and the governance of the family and provisions in the 25th, and the authority of teaching at the 30th. This is actually why right here with the governance of the family, this is why, again, the priesthood is reserved to traditionally 25, authority of teaching 30th, because 30 ends up being the year of perfection for the medievals. Okay, is there anything else that I wanted to go into? Yes, I said that I wanted to go into... yeah, we can look at the canon law too. This is important. It actually mentions the idea of prudence. Canon 1067, a boy cannot validly, so again, this is about sacramental validity. Validly contract marriage before he has completed his 16th, and a girl before she has completed the 14th. Although marriage contracted after the aforesaid age is valid, pastors of souls should defer it from young people who have not reached an age at which, according to the custom of the country, marriage is usually contracted. So again, there's this issue of prudence, which is being brought forward. The church, however, wisely admonishes pastors to deter young people from marrying against the statutes of their respective countries. For the custom of a country is the best interpreter of the natural law in matters of this kind. Again, the same idea is being brought forward by canon law. And then I wanted to bring forward... Yes, and then the Ratum Tantum, just to show you guys I'm not making this up either. This is Canon 1061. 1061, a valid marriage between the baptized is called Ratum Tantum. If it has not yet been consummated, it is called Ratum et Consummatum. If the spouses have performed between themselves in a human fashion a conjugal act which is suitable in itself for the procreation of offspring, to which marriage is ordered by its nature and by which the spouses become one flesh, After a marriage has been celebrated, if the spouses have lived together, consummation is presumed until the contrary is provided. An invalid marriage is called putative if at least one party celebrated in good faith until both parties become certain of its nullity. Okay, so this is the distinction between the indissolubility of marriage and illicity or invalidity, which have to do with different types of matrimonial impediments. Okay, so now I wanted to bring forward some of the positive laws on this matter. Okay. Okay, let me pull it up. Sorry, this is from the Catholic Encyclopedia. Got to pull it up for you guys, and then I'll answer questions and stuff. Again, just showing that I haven't been making up all of this stuff. Okay. So let me see if there's anything in the live chat. Okay. So betrothals require 7 full years in the contracting parties. The marriageable age is 14 full years in males and 12 full years in females under the penalty of nullity. So again, unless natural puberty supplies the want of years, this is exactly what St. Thomas actually says right here. So this is the penalty of nullity. So again, this is a question of the validity, not a question of whether a valid marriage may be contracted in an imprudent way or even in a sinful way. Marriages void because of the absence of legal or natural puberty are held as sponsalia, which are betrothals, inducing thereby impediment of public decorum, so they're invalid. Civil codes generally require a more advanced age than the canonical. Dispensations, however, as to the required ages are expressly granted by France, Italy, Belgium, Holland, Romania, and Russia. The marriageable age, this is about early 20th century. Marriageable age, and this is pretty old as well. Marriageable age in France, Italy, Belgium, and Romania is 18 for men, 15 for women. France also requires, under penalty of nullity, the consent of parents. Holland, Switzerland, Russia, Caucasian provinces expected 15 and 13. Hungary fixes the age at 18 and 16. Austria, 14 for both parties. Denmark, 20 and 16. Germany, 21 and 16 years respectively. Marriages contracted in Germany below the ages are valid but illicit. Marriages contracted at more youthful ages than these are not irreparably null and void. So again, this is questions of validity. They can be and therefore are ratified. So this is the ratification by continual cohabitation after the prescribed ages. In all the provinces, consent of parents or guardians is required where one or both of the parties have not yet attained a certain age, and it goes over a lot of them where it's 18 or 21 for parental consent. Okay, so this is just general, basic, normal, different question being asked. So yeah, basically Jake didn't read the material correctly. Okay, let me see the comments. Let me see the comments. What is the Dean Responds guy talking about? Who's making these thumbnails? Mr. Unionist Initiative. Okay, let me talk. Yeah. So according to the custom of that country, yeah. So basically, as the canon law says, what canon law is meant to do is canon law isn't meant to give a minimum age for where it'd be smart, or prudent, or even licit. That's not the purpose of canon law. Canon law is really meant to establish and promulgate minimums of validity. And as is stated, expressly in the canon law, the laws and customs of the country are pretty good indicators of when the maturity required for a prudent and licit carrying out of the sacrament. But canon law is about validity. Okay. We talk about somebody. 25 is crazy. So 25, when it comes to the governance of the household, as I mentioned, is talking about the governance of other subjects who are rational agents. So the consummation of the marriage could occur earlier. It's just like, as I said, if you're 12 years old, by the time you're 25 and are able to, in a natural, ordinary way, govern other subjects, it won't be until your kids are like in their early teens. It's way too much time. It's not stating that 25 is somehow like the bare minimum for the greatest prudence. Okay, so also, what was the minimum age of marriage in canon law up until 1917? Okay, so when it comes to the Code of Canon Law, the Code of Canon Law actually didn't exist until 1917. Before this, there would be what are called decretals. So I mentioned earlier the decretal of Gregory the Ninth. So the decretal of Gregory the Ninth plus traditional, that would be for marriages concerning validity, which is the same as the 1917 Code of Canon Law. They just brought over the same prescripts. And the ages of betrothal, that was actually brought around through the Code of Justinian and in through Code of Justinian integration. Okay, so Mr. Dean responds. That's there wasn't a Code of Canon Law before 1917. Okay, yeah. There's ages between, as I said, like early 20s, early to mid 20s. What was the age of adulthood for the early church? Um, as I said, the Code of just Gregory the Ninth. He was when was Gregory the Ninth Pope? Let me look. Pope Gregory the Ninth was Pope in the early 13th century. Um, so let me think. The Decretals of Justinian. Justinian would probably give the same age. I wonder if the Catholic Encyclopedia goes over the history of this. I'm not sure if anybody could give me earlier canons, but they basically just follow the same canon. I mean, they didn't just add a bunch of years to canonical age. Might have it under history. Okay. Anti the pre-Tridentine discipline. This has to do with minor orders. Trying to see if there's anything. Okay, let me see. Unfortunately, I cannot find anything on this. So if anybody has any earlier discipline on this matter, then I would be very interested in seeing this. Okay. Okay, I think I already treated that. Tawil? What is Tawil? Um, what is Tawil? I don't know. It's really obvious, even if you wanted to dispute with me on some points, that the text which uh, Jake is using is not at all relevant to the point that he's making, nor the critique that's given by uh, by the Christians. Tawil. Okay. Okay, I can't figure out what Tawil means. Okay, show some respect, stay on topic. Wait, what in the who in the oh my goodness, you guys. Okay, I'm gonna go to contemporary chat. What is Dean response saying? It's like you keep dodging this one. Answer what question? What question you want me to answer? I answered all your questions, right? Oh, thank you. The Cappadocians and Numenius of Emesa established an age beyond that of 16. Okay, thank you. What do you want me to answer? What was the age of adulthood according to Tertullian and Origin? I don't know. Would do you like to give me the age of adulthood for them? I mean, I'm not either way. I mean, this is kind of just a really weird question because I'm bound to the canonical regulations of the church, the teaching of those who teach in sacramental theology, and the authority of the canonists. So I'm not sure what Origen or Tertullian said on this matter, but I'm not dodging anything. If you'd like to inform me, I would be very interested because I've been doing a lot of research into this question. So I think that that probably would be helpful for my research. Come on, really, Muta University? That's crazy. Christian's a Salafi Catholic. He's not doing any Tawheel. Is that um Mike Gendron destroys me? What did he say? I'm not. Look, guys, I'm not into all of your like weird like Muslim Catholic YouTube, TikTok, Twitter disputes. Like I'm not into this. I'm literally just a guy who knows stuff about sacramentology and canon law. I know about reading St. Thomas. I'm just telling you that Jake read it wrong. Um, so I don't know about all of who these figures you're talking about are. Are you able to invite me up? I'm not going to invite you to my stream. You could just send the sources. I mean, I will look up the sources right now. If they need translating, I can translate them. Um, unless the origins in Greek, my Greek wouldn't be that good. But Tertullian for sure. If it needs translating, Origin, I'm sure I could find the PL version of it. Just give me the references. I'll read them right now. Could you invite me up? Yeah, sure. I'll send it. Yeah, I'm not being. Mr. Dean responds. I'm an honest man. That's why I didn't just go up here and say like Muhammad's a pedophile and stuff like that. I'm being honest. I don't really know about the historical disputes. I know there's different disputes with whatever Hadith literature and history goes on. I don't know about that stuff. Not going to pretend to know about that stuff. I'm just critiquing what Jake is saying, and I'm clarifying what I think the critique of the Christians are, which is that this isn't a question of validity, which St. Thomas is talking about. Is a question of the sinfulness of the contract. So honestly, I'm just an honest guy, my friend. I'm just an honest guy. No, I know Sig. That's why. Sorry, I know Sig. Sig and I talk a lot, so that's why I'm inviting him up because I know him. I don't know you, so I don't think it would be prudent for me to invite you. You're coping about the minimum age of the early church. I'm open to hearing your sources, my friend. I am not your enemy here. Okay, let me see. I'm going to DM Sig. Give him an invite link. Oh, what is your Discord, Sig? I can't remember what it is. Sig knows you, bro. You desperate me? Um. Okay. Tertullian wasn't a heretic. Yes, he was. Bruh. 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 Sig is not out here messaging me, so I can. Maybe this is in my message requests. Okay. Let me see if he actually. My Discord is my name. I looked up, bro. I looked it up. I can't find it. Okay, let me. I'm such boomer. I'm such boomer. Sig, create DM. No, not anarchism. It's so over right now. Okay, friends. Are you not a friend of mine? That's crazy. Send friend request to Sig. Friend request failed. Okay, I'm gonna do a gamer move right now, and I'm just gonna send the invite link in the live chat. And I'm just not gonna let anybody up who is not Sig. Origen in his seventh homily. Okay, so Origen homilies. Okay, homily 7, which ordinarily is not the way in which Origen's homilies um, are annotated. But I'm wondering um, whether the PG does it like this. On Ezekiel. Okay. Now we got something going. Ezekiel 16:8. Okay. So it says homilies on Ezekiel. Okay. Thank you. On Ezekiel. Okay. Homilies on Ezekiel, now available online. Such a W. Okay. Oh, Sig join? Yo, Sig, how's it going, my friend?
Oh my days. CB, Christian, how you doing, man? You good?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm assuming you've researched into
Slick.
this topic a bit because you seem to know a lot.
Fam, do you know what it is? It's just because years ago, like some guy from my school was a Muslim, and he did the whole, you know, British guys used to marry guys really young 100 years ago, therefore it's okay. And I'm just like, that's just not the way that we do things as Christians. Just because a bunch of people do something doesn't
Yeah,
make it right.
I'd actually be curious about that because, from my understanding, English common law has the
Yeah,
same age of validity. Obviously, they don't have the same notions of, at least after the
yeah,
Reformation, of sacramental validity and dissolubility and stuff like
yeah, man.
that.
It was
But I
just
think
like,
English common law is the same as what we would have in the Catholic Church.
yeah. I mean, it took years for us to like get that changed because we just didn't really understand, especially in the 20th century, about like biological growth and things of this nature. It took time for us to sort of get back up to speed, but I then went and did a lot of research into the early church. Ironically, I did a stream with do you know Inspiring Philosophy? I think everyone knows him.
Hmm.
Okay. He also did a big debate with this Daniel Hakikachu guy about
Hmm.
child marriage, whereby obviously, you know, IP does not care about patristics. And I don't mean that he disregards them, as in that's just not something that he typically focuses on. So you see how you focus on the manualist tradition,
Hmm.
you like that kind of stuff. IP is all about science. So he argued that, look, there is no way that you would be able to have intercourse with a child without it having adverse effects. So he quoted people like Albertus Magnus, you know, Giles of Rome,
Hmm.
whereby they say that it's undesirable to do such an action because it is going to bring about an imperfect child, because the child that is doing the birth giving is also imperfect. So they gave like eugenicist reasons as to why you shouldn't do or participate in that action without the individual reaching some sort of maturity. And that would be like demarcated by either the conference of bishops in that area,
Hmm.
or it would be like a team of people, such as, you know, the family extended, you know, the leaders of the city, the bishops, obviously, all working together to find out when this individual is like a-okay to do
Hmm.
these actions, right? So that's why in the early church you don't actually commonly see child unions going on. You have cases, for example, like Augustine, where he gets betrothed to a 10-year-old, I believe. Um, but that was before he was a priest, for example.
Well, I mean, that was
Um,
betrothal as well. So,
exactly. But when we talk about marriage in the early church, um, obviously in our
veiling of virgins.
sacramentology,
Yeah, I looked at the
is
origin
this
reference and I can't find it, so I'm going to look at the veiling. I was actually just reading the veiling of virgins the other day
isn't this
from Tertullian.
post-Montanist? Isn't this like
Yeah,
his
yeah, oh yeah,
post-Montanist phase?
he was already outside of the church when he wrote Veiling of Virgins.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you're appealing to a heretic, right? At this point in
yeah,
time, anyway.
yeah.
That's insane work. But the idea of marriage as a sacrament. Now we know that people like the Cappadocians, Augustine, Ambrose, every saint we can think of, even Chrysostom, when they talk about marriage, they always assume in their mind that it's just between a man and a woman. So someone that has gone beyond the flower of their youth, for example, like 1 Corinthians 7:36 sort of stuff. People sort of assume that into the literature. So when we look at normative ideas of adulthood, we had this culture among the Greeks, especially Basil, and it was attributed to Gregory of Nyssa, but it was actually Numenius of Emesa that wrote this.
Hmm.
Basil, when he articulates, and this is where Hassan like comes in clutch about anthropology, when he articulates his anthropology, he says that the life cycle of a human being, the developmental cycle of a human being, is a 3 7 year period.
Hmm.
So there's
That's
three
exact.
7 year
Yeah, it's from
periods.
Aristotle.
Right, right. And that just gets assumed into the literature. So adulthood primarily was a contemplative feature as well as a biological or sociological feature. That seems to be reached at 21, at least according to the Cappadocians, and that was just assumed by everyone. Like
Hmm.
Basil's work on anthropology just became standard in the East, and it went for a long time just uncontested. So like when people referred to adulthood, especially in the East, they didn't need to establish like a specific age because everyone kind of just knew that Basil was right, sort of thing.
Hmm.
So I can actually get the thingy up here as well, if you man will permit me. I
Yeah,
did a
yeah,
stream on this some
yeah,
time ago as well. But do you want to read
yeah,
this? This is Turt's quote, right?
yeah. This is from Tertullian, which I'm not seeing what is indicating. But yeah, I think what's also important in the East is that
Yeah.
the patristic practice is in many ways overturned by Justinian, and even
Yes.
Justinian's ages are way above what the fathers are being accused of. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like a fortiori argument right there by even appealing to Justinian. But
Mhm.
yeah, St. Basil's absolutely reflecting everything I've seen from both the fathers and the medieval scholastics.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, look, Christian. I mean, you between you and me, you already know the stuff that I love to research into. As you
Mm.
love the manualist tradition, I have my own loves as well, and we talk about that a fair bit as well. So, like just recently, I was on stream and I was talking about this weird stuff with Mecca because there was this weird argument that like Mecca didn't exist or something. But I like to cover that kind of stuff because I like covering beef. It's funny. Um. Oh, Aristotle's
Oh,
politics.
I
Therefore, it
forgot
is.
about what St.
You didn't
Thomas
mention
wrote
the
a
politics
I didn't mention them, but St. Thomas wrote a commentary on the
on
politics.
the
I need to find.
politics. Yeah.
I forgot about this. Okay.
No, it's in
What
Plato as well, right?
what section from the politics is this? Because St. Thomas probably explicitly answers this question there. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
why didn't I think of
It-
this?
It's fitting for women to be married at around the age of 18 and men at the age of 37 or a little before. By the way, the 37 thing, some people argue that Aristotle tried to, well, not Aristotle, but Aristotelian commentators later on tried to pillage that from the Isaac story.
Mhm. Wait, I
Because
think that
Isaac is
section. I don't think St. Thomas completed the sentences commentary to Book 7, which is Book 7. But
Is
there's
what
a
it is.
there's a continuator, so I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what the continuator. Peter
Mm.
of Orang, French word.
Ew.
Um,
Like
yeah,
Orleans? Something like that?
yeah, something like that.
Something like
Okay, let me see. So this would be
Yeah.
section 1335A.
that. Yeah, that's spicy. I got my screen shared as well. I'm using Nonna Harrison's translation. This is I know you don't like Vladimir's press, but it was just the quickest one I could get up. So I apologize for that. But I have the copy of the human condition passage, whatever. So
Oh,
whenever you're ready to
frick,
go,
they
we
don't.
can.
Oh yeah, you have Tertullian. Yeah, could you read Tertullian
I got
while I
Basil.
find the text and then
Yeah, I got it on
and
the
then
screen, right?
yeah, just read it while I go and try to translate the section from the politics.
Yeah, go
And
ahead. Are
find
you
it.
translating it from the Latin, or are you trying to translate it from like Arabic or something?
I'm just translating. Well, it's a Latin commentator, Latin medieval scholastic who continued. He was a student of St. Thomas who continued the translation.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Ew.
yeah,
To be
yeah.
fair, did you go through your view as the fact that like technically Aquinas didn't write the supplementum himself because
Yeah. Because it was the sentence. Well, I actually just quoted directly from the sentence.
from the sentences.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I really don't like that because it kind of makes us look a little dumb because like this I don't think most Muslims would actually pick up on this. They would be like they would kind of like have a brain aneurysm.
like a
I don't
brain
think
fart.
most of them would pick up on this.
Yeah. But hey,
But
I
yeah.
mean, obviously you can find it in the sentences, but again, when it comes to moral theology, like, what does Alphonsus say about this? Does Alphonsus say anything particular?
Actually I actually don't know off the top of my head. That'd be like a Hassan question.
That's a Hassan question right there. Hassan is that guy is too spaghetti on this, man. I'll be honest.
Hassan. That's how they say it. Like when you hear like a fellow Arab say his name, it's like Hassan. It's Hassan.
That's so
Okay, I need to get this. Heck it. I'm just throwing this whole. I'm throwing this whole thing to like ChatGPT. I'm not hand translating this.
Charge it to the game, man. Just charge it to the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me read the Turk quote right now. So, recognize the woman, sorry, that was my attempt at being Canadian. Recognize the wedded woman by the testimonies both of body and of spirit, which she experiences both in conscience and in flesh. These are the earlier tablets of natural espousals and nuptials. Impose a veil externally upon her who has already a covering internally. Let her whose lower parts are not bare have her upper likewise covered. Would you know? Yeah, this is Montanus. You can read this Montanus.
Yeah.
Would you know what is the authority which age carries? Set before yourself each of these two, one prematurely compressed in woman's garb, and one who, though advanced in maturity, persists in virginity. Yeah, the Montanists love virginity. They also love like new revelation. The former will be more easily denied to be a woman than the latter believed a virgin. Such then is the honesty of age, that there is no overpowering it even by garb. What of the fact that these virgins of ours confessed their chance of age even by their garb, and as soon as they have understood themselves to be women, withdraw themselves from virgins, laying aside their former selves, dye their hair, fasten their hair with more wanton pins, so basically like glow up or something, like dress up really nice, professing manifest womanhood with their hair parted from the front, which is literally what Gen Z do. The next thing is they consult the looking glass to aid their beauty, so go into mirrors and start trying to check out if they're, you know what I'm saying, and thin down the over-exacting face with washing, perhaps withal vamp it up with cosmetics, makeup, toss their mantle about them in an air, fit tightly their multiform shoe, carry down more ample appliances to the baths. Why should I pursue particulars? But their manifest appliances alone exhibit their perfect womanhood, yet they wish to play the virgin by the sole fact of leaving their head bare, denying by one single feature what they profess their entire deportment. 12 is not mentioned here. There's no number mentioned here.
Yeah. Now, this is such a W. I'm reading the commentary from the continuator of St. Thomas, and he's saying
it's bad, isn't it?
Yeah, he's saying, well, he gives a bunch of reasons why it's like a really bad idea to do it under 18. It's kind of funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's bad. I told you they were all eugenicists, bro. Every single reason they give is eugenicist, by the way. Like every single one.
Well, they also give like moral reasons. They say like if somebody becomes accustomed at a younger age to the use, then they're more likely to be overly attached to it.
Yeah,
which isn't really an issue from Muslim moral standards. I mean, that's not even an own. That's just an issue of like they think of the ascetical life differently.
Yeah, I mean, our contemplative maturity is like one of the most important things. I mean, even Chrysostom in his homily on, and this is me riffing off my brain, if you guys go to his homily on Colossians or Ephesians, you'll see that he complains about the fact that people rush people into marriage too quickly. Because for him, marriage was a contemplative exercise. It was a good insofar as it united two people under God. So simply just marrying people very young for the sake of political goals or for the sake of, quote, love, without that being properly qualified under God was a bad thing for him. Which makes sense because John Chrysostom is the same guy that lived in a cave for 2 years and didn't really commit himself to marriage. So, but that's the idea. The idea is that you need to be mature. And maturity doesn't seem to be reached scientifically at the age of 12, 13, or 14, you know. These things used to take place in Tanner stage 5. So scientifically, that would be between the ages of around 15 to around 17 years old, which is why in most cultures, you would try to establish the age of adulthood to be a year after that. So it's not arbitrary, right? You have...
Lol, this is literally the exact thing that I said. This is amazing. The laws do not determine that it is good to marry at the time of puberty. That is, the women is 12 years old or around that age.
Wait, repeat that again? Repeat that again?
The laws do not determine that it is good to marry at the time of puberty. That is, when the women is 12 years old or around that age, or the men is around 14. But they permit marriage to take place at that time because at that time or around that time, consent can first be valid due to the use of reason, which first begins to exist around that time. Because at that time or around that time, a surplus of nourishment begins to occur. And for the most part, though, imperfectly. So see, literally exactly what I said. It's just a judgment on validity. Yeah, it's just a judgment on validity, whether it's like actually a contracted marriage.
Yeah, that's the same way about like a good example that people could use.
It's chapter 11, not chapter 12.
Scroll up then, I guess. There has to be 12 here. Wow. Okay. A virgin ceases to be a virgin from the time that it becomes possible for her to not be one. Okay. But what we intermitted above for the sake of the subsequent...
Where did you see that? Where did you see that? Oh, for virgin ceased at that time. Oh, dude, this is amazing because this connects in with Tertullian's view on the perpetual virginity.
Yeah, actually. Send the link. Send the link, by the way. Send the link. To this because I can.
Okay.
Control F, bro. Diddy Dean, bro. You gotta chill out, bro. I ain't gonna lie. Hold on.
Yeah, so true. So true.
Yeah, and accordingly
Yeah,
among Israel,
then you have the age of like the maturity that requires the governance of household and the entrance into a relationship with another person.
which would be around 21 plus, because it was, by the way, it
Mhm.
was also like assumed to be like fighting age as well. So like if you look at, let's say, Old Testament passages, adulthood seems to be assumed to be 20 and up, because that would be the age a man would be allowed to go to war.
Mhm.
So you'd count from 20
Yeah,
upwards.
also what's interesting is something that the commentary brings up from Aristotle, and this actually perfectly aligns with like the relationship between 18 and 25.
Mm-hmm.
It's that a big consideration is the age of the parents when their children reach certain milestones. So, like when
Yeah,
your child is at the age of reason, it's not just about like keeping a kid alive, which like a 15-year-old babysitter can keep a kid alive. You know,
exactly.
it's not entirely
Right.
that difficult. But like governing
Mm-hmm.
somebody and training them in virtue and governing them towards their proper end, that requires
Mm-hmm.
the abilities of governance that happen around 25. You know,
Age
25
25
minus
to
7,
25.
18. You know, it
Yep.
all kind of fits together with what the medievals are talking about, what the Aristotelian tradition talks about. So I mean, I have no reason to believe that a question of validity is somehow going to
Be
affect these
morally
like
weighted
very
here.
yeah exactly. It's literally a completely different question that Jake is bringing up
The weird thing is as well, they think validity means good, like in the sense that we're talking about.
for
You
their
know.
okay. The quote starts for their females.
Oh my days.
For their okay females.
There you go.
Okay, so time even the heathens observe that in obedience to the law of nature, they may render their own rights to the different ages. For the females, they dispatch their businesses from the age of 12 years, but the male from 2 years later. So he's just accounting for Roman law. I mean, decreeing puberty consists in years, non espouses or nuptials. Housewife, one is called, albeit a virgin. House father, albeit a stripling. Dude, he's literally critiquing.
He's literally saying it, bro.
Oh Allah the Almighty.
You can't make this up, bro. You can't make this up, bro. I'll be honest. You can't make this up. Sorry.
Bro.
That music was not me. I'm sorry.
This is
bro.
crazy. This is actually
Send
crazy.
me,
This is so
Christian.
funny.
Could you send me the link in the private chat, because I can highlight stuff, by the way.
This is amazing. Oh wait,
Dude, it says even the heathens observe that their females do this. It's their females.
That's crazy. That's actually crazy. He's literally critiquing the practice.
Yo,
That's
he's
so.
saying that
That's
they
so
go.
funny. That's so funny.
They're saying that they go contrary to God.
Oh my
They
god.
go against God.
This is actually like this is like a frequent Wagner W. I always catch him like right on the stream, just being completely wrong. Everyone. Okay, I'll send you the link. Oh my
Please,
goodness,
bro.
dude, that's crazy.
Yo, you know
Yo,
you
what-
saying that you're butchering the text.
That's nuts. Oh my goodness. I need to send this to Hassan. Hassan would love this quote.
Nah, you gotta put this on a t-shirt. That's what you gotta do. You gotta put this on a t-shirt.
Okay, do you have anything else you would like to critique us on that you want us to go over?
Please go ahead, bro.
You're completely butchering the text. He's critiquing them. He's critiquing them. He's saying he's literally the whole point of this text, because if you've ever read this text, which I actually have read this text, if you've ever read this text, a major purpose, a major point that he's bringing forward is that maturity of body is actually not enough. And what's important is the maturity of soul, which is the proper virtues to have in order to engage in marriage. I've read a lot of Tertullian. That's actually one of the first authors that I read when I was considering Catholicism. Yo, W Unius Initiative, we love you. Heart, heart, heart.
That's so cute. Gifted 5 Scholastic Answers memberships. That's actually so cute. Oh yeah, put my screen on. Because I'm.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So as you can see here, guys. Right. By the way, New Advent is cool, but it's not the greatest, but it's cool. I need to go to key 4 then get this done. So notice it says for their females, they dispatch. So I really want you guys to notice the pronouns. Their females, they dispatch to their businesses. So the pagans do it to the pagans for the pagans. But the male from 2 years later, they decree puberty to consist in years, not in espousals or nuptials. So this is again, Tertullian's position, which is generally the Montanist position on these things. Housewife one is called, even though they are a virgin, and house father, albeit a stripling.
And by virgin,
by us,
by the
go ahead.
way, to kind of explain that by virgin, if you look into multiple of Tertullian's writings, for example, De Carne Christi, there's a second place against Marcion, book 4. And there's a third place as well that I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it might be actually chapter 6 of this work. When you look throughout the various works of Tertullian, by virgin, he's very clear. And he distinguishes between virgin and woman. Woman would be one who is mature enough in order to, carry out the roles of motherhood and like the family life. And virgin's just talking about a young woman. It isn't talking about like the loss of physical or moral virginity. This becomes important when he talks about, he says, for example, that Our Lady is better called a woman than virgin. And what he means by this is because of the giving of the birth of the Messiah, not because she somehow lost her virginity and having children after. So
it's not
I mean,
she's like uber young either. Like the idea here that's being like adduced is, look, even though they are children, by the way, because as CB explained, virgin here just means like someone that's young. So even though they are young, they are called a housewife, and he's saying that this is wrong. As you can see here, albeit a stripling, they are children according to Tertullian. By us, so this is Tertullian's position, not even these natural laws are observed, as if God of nature was somehow other than ours. He's critiquing the fact that they do this. He's saying it's bad. He's saying this know us. This know our position. But look, this is something that we do need to look at. So anyone that wants to,
by the way, I looked for the Tertullian text. I mean, I pulled up the PDF and everything, and I looked through the homily, the origin text. I mean, not the origin text. I can't find the origin text you're referring to, so you need to be a little bit more careful. Right. Could you not say things like this, please? I mean, that's kind of gross.
Yeah, that's no Diddy, bro. We don't appreciate, you know what I'm saying? We don't appreciate that in the chat. This isn't even my chat, guys. Be respectful to CB over here, okay? Don't be doing that. But as you can see, Christian,
can you invite me up? Why? So you can bring forward a lot more text you haven't read? I mean, come on now.
Bro, you had your run, bro. By the way, people have been calling him Diddy Dean. It's hilarious. This is the work on the human condition. So for anyone that wants to read this is actually alongside the Hexameron. This is a good work that you can read to, go through Basil's anthropology. And he's talking about the origin of humanity. And we're going to look at the first homily over here. Now, what you want to do is, I need to get to the part where Basil starts talking about growing. Because when he talks about growing, he has already proven that the triune God is the person that is doing, is the being that's doing the creating. So that's really important to keep in mind. So when God is establishing what it means for a human being to develop, he's going to go through that. You can also go through his anthropology on the soul. It's really good. Now, where does he say grow? He's still creating fish, created human beings. Okay, there you go. We're going to read from here because he talks about growth. So when Basil says grow, is that big enough for your audience? Can they see that? Or
let me check. Yeah, it's good.
Nah, cool. So I'm going to read this through slowly so you guys can get the exegesis properly. Grow, that is to grow up. You are born small, you become big, and let there be a limit to your growth. If we grow in the first 7 years and we advance in stature in the second period of 7 years, we are not similarly obliged in every part of our life to grow in each 7-year period. The first 7-year period contains the age of childhood. The limits of the age of childhood are manifest in the replacement of teeth. Some have fallen out, others have grown from beneath them. Growth makes a second beginning, leading to the completion of the 14th year. So this is the second.
So the segments. Where do we hear these segments from? St. Albert the Great and St. Thomas.
And this is assumed into the literature. This is just what gets assumed into the literature.
Yeah.
Like most things from Basil, he was so prolific that a lot of these things get assumed into the literature. Another work that gets assumed as well is his address to young men on the use of Greek literature. So when he addresses young men about how we're supposed to use pagan literature, we're supposed to take the good from the good and reject the evil that is within these works. That is, because of Basil, assumed into Greek paideia, Christian Greek paideia. That's just assumed. Same thing happens here. Second segment of childhood. So lock in, guys, right? Lock in. Second section of growth, you're 14. We still have one more section left, and Basil's going to explain. Herein are the limits of growth. Therefore, grow. If you reach 100 years, you do not admit of growth from the first to the 100th year. But this one word, grow, spoken wisely, structures things providentially. That's really important. He thinks that this is a uniform thing across humans, right? It's a uniform thing. You do have anomalies, but again, they are exceptions. They're not the norm. Grow to what point? And Basil recognizes that some people grow faster than others, which is why he says that there is no measure of growth. With the first structure brought into being in the womb, the principles of growth were also brought into being. For the gift that afterward comes into being with age is not new, but the things brought into being within the mother also receive at that time the characteristics most useful for growth. This is anti-abortion, obviously. The teeth fall out, and we know that there has been growth to a certain measure. The father measures the child of 3 years, so this is just standardly what they would do in the Cappadocian region. He knows that it will receive twice this size at the completion of this period. For the child will grow to twice the stature it has at 3 years, and then to twice the stature again when grown. For this is the measure of human nature as far as there is a boundary, as far as there is a limit. And he's still talking from where? The first, second period to the second.
Wait, could you pause this real quick?
Go ahead.
What is the matter with you? I mean,
Yeah,
we're
you're
talking
sick.
about religious matters,
Yeah,
and you're going to bring this filth? It's absolutely
you're
sick. I mean, come on.
You're sick.
Disgusting.
You're sick.
Get out of here. Yeah, absolutely disgusting. I mean, I don't know why
Yeah,
these...
odd.
Like, what is the purpose of religion if you're going to act like this? Like, come on now.
I can't lie, he's sick.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. Yeah.
Anyways.
Dean, this is why we call you what we call you, man. I mean, that's disgusting. But let's continue. So, after the heat becomes greater, the body's excellence is molded, moisture is left behind, limbs are strengthened. Human beings are at the beginning of what? The stronger part of youth, without yet possessing maturity. This is the end of the second 7-year period. This is when you're 14. So although they have finished childhood, they have not reached adulthood, right? They haven't possessed maturity yet. They're still youths. For their flesh is still newly made, and it is unsuited for the endurance of labors. The same thing you were talking about, Christian, when it came to the age of 25. Basil just uses it for 21 because it was more standard. At this point, the living being has received lightness and agility. In the third 7-year period, he then he receives the completion of youth. And there is still an increase in the height of the body. So, as you can see, it is after 21 that for Basil and many, adulthood is reached, right? Because Basil thinks that it's a sociological, biological, and contemplative process. So you biologically age, and even though you can be a prodigy and smart by the age of 14, your intellect may be heightened for some reason, that does not mean that your body has finished maturing. You're still going to be considered young. Your youth is completed when you reach the third 7-year period, when you're 21. So I went through this on my stream, but I thought I would bring it to your viewers here. So I really want you guys to grok this information. And by grok, I'm referring to E.P. Heinlein's book. To really understand and intuit this information inside you. That when we talk about the age of adulthood, the early church assumed these things. They didn't set about to prove them because it was not a norm for the common folk to be marrying children. So they never had to go out to do it. Yes, you had the elites, of course. The elites were always weird. But Christianity was not a religion for the elites in the beginning, especially not at the time of Basil. Basil is a public celebrity at this point. But even at that, the majority of the Christians were lay people. Even Origen himself notes the fact that they were lay people, private citizens that were broke. Yep. So you would wait, because just like socioculturally, right? You wouldn't have time to be getting betrothed at the age of 7 or 8, because you're going to be working in the fields, you're going to be working in the mines, you're going to be working somewhere to provide for your family. And you could only probably think about marriage when you're 23, because now you've been able to have enough money to keep your little farmhouse going. So again, Basil's just saying, look, this is the reality, right? Now, there's also another person that you should probably know, Manius of Emesa. Not Nemenius of Apamea.
Yeah, what's really cool, kind of to go in, is, as I've been emphasizing, is that the medieval scholastics, which shaped the eventual post-Reformation Catholic culture and the canonical regulations of the 1983 Code of Canon Law. I mean, they were just stating these same things, like explicitly, the same exact things that the fathers were stating about the periods of 7 and how that fits in, ages of validity, and so on and so forth. They're stating these exact same things.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, we have a work that was written by a bishop that he's not a saint, but his work was so good, because some non-saints can write good things. His work was so good that his work, people thought that Gregory of Nyssa wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, so we have this variance of tradition. I always speed off into different points, but I'm going to start with here. We have this variance of tradition between Plato and Aristotle, and people usually interpret them in their own little veins. They combine them, but they interpret them in their own little veins. Numenius goes through this Platonic idea of when a person is an adult, and it corroborates what Basil says. But that work, Numenius, is like a tome for many of these people in the East. So when they were establishing marriages, they would always refer to the idea that, okay, have we seen this person being fully developed? Okay, maybe they could be fully developed at a younger age, but it would never be outside of the range between 15 to 21 years of age. Like it was a rarity to see someone 13, 12. And usually the Conference of Bishops, especially in the East, they would say, no, that's wrong. We will not permit that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why.
Yeah, but what Jake was saying is because what St. Thomas says about like validity of consummation, the indissolubility of marriage, which are sacramental.
He thinks he's fine.
Well, he basically, the way that he framed it, he says, well, St. Thomas says that the positive regulations of the church 12 and 14, which just generally occur, that could be off by years, which everybody says. And he's like, well, what this means St. Thomas thinks that even like a few years under 12 for girls, St. Thomas thinks it's okay and normal to get married. I'm like,
I think even what Jake is going to say is like he thinks that it's like metaphysically possible that God would be completely fine with consummation sexually of a marriage. By the way, consummation is also something that needs to be talked about as well. So consummation, you've taken them through Pope Innocent III, right?
No, I haven't taken them through Pope Innocent III. I took them through the 1983 Code of Canon Law, which talks about what constitutes consummation.
Ooh, that's fancy. That's really fancy from you, Christian, honestly.
Yeah, because basically my point to them, to the Muslims, is if they want to use this argument, just use what modern marriage tribunals say, because the modern marriage tribunals say the same thing that St. Thomas says.
Yeah, as the ancient marriage tribunals. Oh no, but we didn't have tribunals. They were just marrying kids, remember, Christian?
Yeah, real. They didn't have marriage tribunals. Which,
they all used to do it, bro.
Yeah, real.
Oh my gosh. But for those that don't know who Pope Innocent III is, he is probably one of the craziest popes of all time.
I love Pope Innocent III.
Yeah, Lothar of Segni was insane. Like, as in, when you think of how movies portray the power of a pope, that was him cranked to 11. As
Absolutely.
In, he was able to grab Europe in a large sense by the balls, like a lot. He was really, really influential. he was one of the last popes that you would see for a long time that genuinely had power over the world. Like, not I say the world, but like over what we would consider the world, like the Roman Empire, the Latin West. And I really want you guys to understand that, because his work transcended and really influenced even the greatest canon lawyers, like what's his name? Who taught him? Huguccio, there you go. Huguccio, something like that. Hugo of Pisa. Hugo of Pisa. Hugo of Pisa was a really special guy as well. He was rumored to have taught Pope Innocent III whilst he was still a lawyer. He taught him for like 3 years. And a lot of academics in the modern day question how good Innocent III was at canon law. Okay? But Innocent III wrote a treatise on marriage. By the way, just to show you how Catholic this guy was, he said that he was above men but below God. Like, that's how how cool he was, okay? That's how cool you guys consider him, okay? He wrote on the 4 criteria that are necessary for marriage. And he concludes that all that is needed for consummation, specifically, is the consent of the I do vows. That's it. And that's what actually gets standardized in the literature. When we talk about consummation, we don't talk about sex because of him. Right? And obviously Christian knows this, so I'm talking to a brick wall here. But for you guys in chat, you should also know this as well, that Pope Innocent III standardizes these people, right? He standardizes these ideas on marriage that make their way into Lateran 4 itself. Because Lateran 4 is just an extension of Innocent III's ideals. It's just an extension of what he wanted. He wanted Lateran 4 to be this great conclave of bishops from across the world. Like, the hagiographical literature portrays it as this great, humongous sight of people rushing to the chapel to hear the words of the great Pope.
Innocent III was amazing. Have you? He has some great sermons on the papacy where he'll go into the Old Testament. Yeah, he'll go. What's great about him is he'll go into like a bunch of Old Testament texts that just don't really get brought up by like post-medieval figures when they're talking about the papacy. Because now it's such like a polemical thing where he was just like ransacking the Old Testament.
He didn't care because for the first time in a long time since the Gregorian reforms, no one could stop him. As in, there wasn't a man alive powerful enough, whether a public theologian, right, a private citizen, a secular authority, or an ecclesiastical figure that had enough influence. None of the above could challenge Innocent III in his opinions. And Innocent was young. He became Pope at 35, I think. Right? He had the world at his feet. If any of you watch football, if any of you know like a football or soccer,
which okay,
the real football, okay.
Yeah.
So if any of you know about football, okay, remember back in 2018 when Kylian Mbappe was like the most popular player in the world. He somehow transcended Ronaldo because he was so young and so good at such a crucial time that the world was at his feet. Right? That's Innocent III. You have to understand how important he is, because when he writes his treatise on canon law, which transcends the canon lawyers at the time, because he was taught by a man known as Huguccio, right? Let me see if I can even get his name here. Yeah, Hugh of Pisa. I say Hugo of Pisa, but Uguccio. I'm just going to use Wikipedia to show you guys who he is. We don't really know much about Huguccio, but we know that he was an amazing canon lawyer. He was the best canon lawyer of his age. So when we talk about the best canon lawyers, that's him. Right? He also wrote a work on Gratian's Law, which Gratian's Law obviously gets standardized as well. So there's a lot of standardization that's going on, which is really important, okay? I'm sharing my screen, so that's all good. But there's a lot of standardization that goes on here, guys. Right? So this is Higucho, this is who he is. Okay? And Higucho dies, obviously, I think, before Aquinas really gets big, because he's not even that old yet. And he standardizes canon law. So when Pope Innocent III is reflecting on his musings of canon law, he's actually getting it from Higucho. So he's getting it from Higucho, he's translating it, and then he actually standardizes it, not just as the Pope, the greatest man in the world right now, as in most powerful man in the world right now, but he's doing it as the best canon lawyer in the world right now. That's how against child marriage we are. So yeah, a guy at my parish translated this sermon. Nice.
Yeah. So that's interesting. It's just something so consistent throughout the tradition. This is just the dangers of as I said at the beginning of the stream, this is the dangers of somebody like Jake, who was, he was a cradle Catholic, obviously somebody who didn't particularly partake of studies in canon law or sacramentology, or even, the history of just Christian moral reflection on marriage. And then trying to go and reading a very complicated text like the fourth book of sentences, and then reading it like a just normal 21st century white guy who would read it. I mean, that's like that's not, and then employing it for sort of apologetic gotcha.
That's like trying to go in and read like someone's university dissertation on the bachelor level. You just go in and read their like bachelor thesis. That's literally what he's doing. Like, it's literally Aquinas' bachelor thesis. Like, he's going in, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna just read this. Yeah, long day, word is born. We got it. I'm like, what? Hold on, whoa, Jake, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, a lot of the stuff from the fourth book of sentences is literally just things about impediments. I mean, St. Thomas doesn't write a lot about the mystical and ascetical aspects of marriage, or like anything like that. In the fourth book of sentences, it's literally just a work where he discusses matrimonial impediments. Like, that's it. So I mean, if you're expecting anything more from this, then you're kind of going to the wrong text. You go to maybe his commentaries on various parts of Scripture, where he does discuss this more. But going to this text is just it just shows that you kind of aren't really too aware of the person that you're reading.
Let's say even if you were to charge Thomas Aquinas, I'm not saying you're going to. I'm just saying, let's say we wanted to charge Thomas Aquinas and be like, the guy was wrong, right? Scripture, okay, the Bible, we have that thing. 1 Corinthians 7:36 gives the criteria of marriage. Obviously, you've gone through the Greek text with them, or no?
1 Corinthians 7:36. I mean, I haven't. I could.
So I can do that now, actually. So, because you don't know how to highlight on Google, do you?
I think I can.
Can you highlight on like web pages and stuff? Because I can just share my screen if it's easier for you.
Oh, I didn't even think of using the Uberacmos.
Yeah.
Real. Oh, that's cool. I never even thought about this.
Mm-hmm. It's a hapax legomenon as well. It only appears there.
Really? Is it a hapax legomenon?
Yeah, it's only there.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And guess who uses it also? Guess who uses it as well?
Aristotle?
Plato
uses it. Wow. Mm-hmm. This is bro's like, you've done this, right? And then just drops like absolute fire on me.
Here even Thayer notes this, right? And it actually is where he talks about primes. So he says the prime of youth, which is the 7th year, not the 14th year. It'll be beyond that 3rd year period, the completion, right? So it says beyond the acme or bloom of life, past prime. And he quotes Eustathius as well. So Thayer's rendition of this, you can just put this on the screen. Thayer's rendition of this is in Plato, and you guys can check this as well. But the reason I wanted to show Christian this is because Christian's Latin is much better than mine. The Vulgate translate this as super adultus. What does that mean?
I mean, that would be like basically above the age of around 21.
Sorry, Christian. I might be tripping there, you know what I'm saying? Because my Greek is all right, you know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
maybe I'm tripping. What did you say?
Above the age of 21.
The age of what?
21.
21. I thought we have sex with children.
Yeah,
Z.
so
I thought that's what
true.
we do.
Yeah, because I mean, that would be above the that would be above the third. Wow, that's I didn't. Wow, he's telling me this now for the first time. It's like, yeah. Wow. Let's look at St. Thomas's commentary on this. This is about to get nice.
Mm-hmm. You know Aquinas Dasi sing?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that right now. You got a commentary on scripture?
Oh wait, didn't he cut off before? Oh no. Oh, he cut off before that verse. I'm about to just like blow my brains out. I forgot.
No, don't worry.
He cut off halfway. No, he cut off halfway. St. Thomas.
Did he?
Halfway. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, he stopped it. He stopped at verse 14. I just remembered that.
He sold the bag. But we have C7S. So this is Peter of Tarantes.
Yeah.
Peter of Tarantes continues it. Mm-hmm. You have it here, right?
Yeah, marriageable
so he says,
age.
If she's above the age, so he says here, right? In the first part, he supposes the virgin to be of marriageable age. Right there.
Wow. This is... Bro is telling me this now. He's telling me this now for the first
read
time.
the ordinary gloss on the thing, bro. It's just assumed.
Uh-huh. Man, I'm looking through to see if there's any other references throughout the works of St. Thomas of Super Volta.
Try to find it. I can look at TLG for you as well, because the TLG actually goes into this crazily as well. Pardon me. So yeah, guys, make sure you check out my streams, okay? I'm actually going to be reviewing, Frederick Copleston?
Copleston, yes, his history. Yeah.
I'm going to be going through Copleston's debate with Bertrand Russell. I'm going to be doing a debate review on it.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. Because I want
they debate the existence of God.
Exactly. And obviously Russell came up with Russell's paradox, which is fascinating, by the way. I was explaining this to Joshi and Sanctus. I don't know if you know who Joshi or Sanctus are.
Dude, you're such a jerk, because now I'm going to be like up all night tonight looking through medieval authors commenting on this.
That's
on
not
this
my
text.
fault. CB, that's not my fault. Christian, I didn't mean this. I'm just a British guy that does pseudo black theology like critical Thomas. Okay?
Pseudo black theology.
It's not my fault. I learned from Anthony Reddy sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, that's not my fault. But as you can see, okay. This is actually what's really important. So for anyone that wants to use Greek, that wants to go through Greek texts throughout the patristic era, just the ecclesiastical era, as well as the pre-New Testament era and the Attic era, here's what you do. TLG, get an account. I'm going to repeat that again. TLG, get an account. Why? Because they actually give you all of the works as well as the relevant lexicons for this. Now, we're going to be using F.W. Danker's one because, as you can see, this is the... Yeah, his one... So, for those of you that don't know who F.W. Danker is, I mean, Christian can tell you about him.
I'm looking at the... We'll look at what John Chrysostom says.
Chrysostom sort of assumes it. He doesn't really say much. No, Chrysostom. Actually, get up Chrysostom. Yeah, Chrysostom's actually really interesting.
Oh, he doesn't comment on the Superadultum.
No, he just assumed that, but that's the point. You're looking at homily 19, right?
Yes, I'm looking at
on 1 Corinthians. Yes. Yeah. You see how they always refer to it in the 4-verse block? It's always 36 to 40, and they just zooms past, right? Because no one thinks that they need to prove that child marriage is wrong because no one was doing it. That's the point. So, for those of you who don't know, F.W. Danker is one of the greatest lexicographers of his generation, right? Noted New Testament scholar, preeminent Koine Greek lexicographer for 2 generations. He was really, really, really good. Okay? Now, in his lexicon, as you can see, you can look at other lexicons like Lampe's lexicon. This refers to being past the prime. So in the patristic literature, this is past your prime. Your prime is going to be the midpoint between the 3rd, 7th year period. How do we know that? Back to Basil, right? Received lightness and agility. So the prime of that would be the midsection, okay? So between the lower bound of the 14th year and the upper bound of the 21st year, you have the median point of your prime. So beyond such, that's good. And you can guess where that age is, miraculously, right? What's between 14 and 21? You guys can do the math yourself.
18.
Around 17, 18.
Which
what's the age of consent?
which fits in perfectly with the 7 to the 25 and governance of the house. Dude, our mashallah, all of our scholars, all of our crap, what are they called, scholars again? all of our sheikh, they're all in agreement.
Your imams, you know, Shaykh al-Islam.
Yes, so true.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. The medievals were just, medievals were crazy. They were just smartest guys ever. They just intuited everything before them. They were just like, I'm just gonna guess 25 minus 7 is a great time to get married, and then St. Paul's just like, I agree.
They did like a
yeah. Then the Muslim does the meme and comes out of the corner. Is there somebody you forgot to ask?
Actually,
I
age of 7.
I agree. Is there somebody you forgot to ask?
Oh my gosh. You forgot about me? Like, what kind of stupidness is this? Like, they're gonna be like, oh, you know what I'm saying? We gonna have marriage at 9. You know what I'm saying? Word is born. And they just like, whoa. Let's not do that. Let's not rupture the body, okay? Now, as you can see on the screen, guys, screen, F.W. Danker, so we're just gonna call him Dub, right? F.W. Danker refers to huparakmos specifically as being understood temporally and as a status term applied to a woman. When someone is past one's prime, past marriageable age, past the bloom of their youth, which would be when you reach Tanner stage 5, and at one's sexual peak, which would be 21. So, as you can see, guys, even the lexical arguments help us here, because they refer to the fact that you have to be an adult, okay? So whenever a Muslim comes up to you and be like, yo, age of marriage is 9 years old, word is born, just tell them that they're weird and they should watch Christian B. Wagner streams and SIIIG streams. I'm not going to lie to you guys. You need to go on this. You know what I'm saying? WCB in the chat. Can we start that? Can we start a CB trend
So
instead
true.
of...
So true.
Instead
Dude,
of
I'm red pilling Hassan on all of this.
On the WL community. We have a WL Catholic community. That's hilarious. WCB Wags. WCB. There has to be scripts and records from the Middle Ages as well. Probably. But what you want to see is whether it was a norm for them to marry children. That's what you want to see.
You could find records for like 14-year-old popes.
Yeah.
Like 8-year-old bishops. I mean, you can find records for a lot of stuff.
You could find records of kids baptizing. Hashtag Athanasius. Athanasius baptized a guy at the age of 9. Do we think that means that we should always be using 9-year-olds to baptize? No. Okay? So, yeah. The next time Diddy Dean does this stuff, like, please. You know what I'm saying? Oh, do you want to keep answering questions, my guy, right?
I'm probably gonna go soon. I wanted to chill before bed, dude. I'm explaining all this stuff to Hassan, and Hassan's just like, huh?
He'll be like, is it that SIIIG guy again? No, I'm kidding. I love Hassan. I love Hassan so much. I know there was a lot of beef with what's it called, CT, but that was crazy. I was watching that on the sidelines, and I was like, what's going on? What? But yeah, no, it was cool.
I'm the bridge that joins everyone together.
You are the avatar.
Exactly.
I guess I'm like the avatar, but I'm black. You know what I mean? Like I bridge like the black. I'm the Blavatar, bro. I just bridge the black scholastics and the Groypers together. I'm like,
which if you were a Power Ranger, which one would you be?
Next question.
I'd be the white Power Ranger.
I'll be the black Power Ranger, of course. Come on now. The coolest Power Ranger. Of course I am. It's almost like it's in my blood. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what it is. It's just like it's in my blood to be the black Power Ranger. Someone said soon Kai Cenat and ISO Speed will be decimated by the SIIIG Wagner chained together scream. Oh my gosh.
Do you have any insights? Because I've been thinking about this because there's a bunch of stuff about the and after this I'll have to go because I kind of want to chillax before bed. I haven't had dinner yet.
Yeah, do your thing, man.
But I've been thinking about the exact nature of betrothal in Jewish custom,
Yeah,
because there's a few interesting points here, because there's like the three stages of betrothal. Well, for at least like later Roman law, there's
yeah.
betrothal, which is a future promise. There's
Marriage.
ratified marriage, and there's consummated marriage. So there's like
Yeah,
kind of like a three stage. It seems like it's basically merit. It seems like it's that the second one, where it wouldn't be sinful for them to engage in the use. It would just be something taboo or something out of the ordinary, and usually awaiting like a public ratification
yeah.
of them
So,
coming together under the same household.
mm, so the idea of consummation is so when we talk about this is actually something about the perpetual virginity of Mary as well. So obviously, this is a basic Catholic apologetic point. When you go to Matthew and you read like the account of Mary and Joseph coming together,
Mhm.
right? It says that obviously he hasn't known her, and then they come together. I'm gonna try and get the Greek word for it, but this Greek word is basically gonna
Synechomai?
explain Synechomai, yeah, but I want to get the verse that specifically says. Is it verse 18 that says it? Synechomai, something like that.
I think so, off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it now. Let me see. He wanted to depose her publicly. Birth pledged. Yeah, there you go. Synelithine. Yeah, so Synechomai is like coming into a house or assembling together. So there's this like ritual middle gap where before you actually do the do, because I want to be PG, before you do the do, you need to like go inside the house together. So it's not just like living together, it's like actually going inside the house together. Now,
Mhm.
little Scott Jones talk about this as like a coming together or an assemblance or a meeting or being joined as one, right?
Mhm.
Now, there are times that this refers to just pure intercourse, right? As
Yeah.
we see this in Aristotle, like a couple,
Mhm.
and he has this in his work as well. We have this in his History of Animals, but when it comes to the Bible's usage, it never means sex,
So true.
ever. So why is that important? Because that means that the Jews beforehand, because it's in Matthew, it's not anywhere else, it's in Matthew specifically. Because in Matthew, that means that the text is referring to a Jewish backdrop. So that Jewish backdrop would mean that you have that three stage of, you have the contract being written plus betrothal. Then you have the coming in of the house, whatever, which would be when it's valid. So in the Catholic tradition, it'd be like the I do vows when you come in together. Then you have the sex. Sex is not necessary.
Mhm.
So even within the tradition, you have that idea there. And this makes sense because you can now be married to a person without having sex with them, which is true. And we have times where we assume that they have, actually not even assume, the Bible has to explicitly tell us that they have sex. Otherwise, we can't assume it. So
Yeah.
if you look at Adam and Eve, right? Adam knows Eve. Even Jerome doesn't contest that knowing means sex. That's fine.
Yeah, of course.
Adam knows Eve, right? But without that instruction by the Bible, the Jewish community would not have assumed that Adam and Eve had sex. And that's standard for marriages. You will see that every time a guy gets married, the text has to for some reason make it clear that they then have coitus.
Mm.
So that's the Jewish assumption that I would be reading into the text there.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hopefully that helps.
I think because there are certain instances which I was reading about
Mhm.
in like among the rabbinics in Palestine, where they do mention couples before the coming together of living in the same house. They do mention them engaging in the use, and that it
Mhm.
wasn't sinful. Is just something that was like indecent, I guess, if you want to put it like that, or like
Yeah.
less
So
ideal of some sort.
you can have the nuptial agreement in the idea of the I do vows.
Yeah, so
The sex would
I
always
think it
be part.
literally follows very closely to the Ratum Tantum tradition in the
Yeah,
West
yeah.
a lot more than it does like our idea of engagement.
Yeah, we think that
If you
we
had to have
think
to get a
that
divorce, you'd have to get a divorce to dissolve the marriage. That's very important.
yeah, and
Before the coming
even
together.
then, like we have like the reason why age is an impediment is a contemplative thing. Like you're saying that they are not fit enough to be able to receive the grace of marriage, like to receive the actual grace of it. There is something stopping them from doing that because they're not mature enough to receive that kind of grace.
Mhm.
So that's the idea, Catholics, that you need to keep in mind. When you say something is invalid, sorry, I say invalid, but when you say something is an impediment to this positive thing being given, you're saying that there is something within the condition of this man or woman that is stopping them from receiving the grace. So let's say, for example, when you have an invalid baptism, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, because you've messed up the Trinity. You actually did something wrong. There is something wrong on the part of the person. They don't have faith. On the part of the person giving the sacrament, administering, they don't have the grace to administer it. They didn't say the proper words, for example, which specifically inundate the spiritual, metaphysical reality of the Trinity. But let's say you have a valid baptism, like I don't know, for some reason, I'm just going to make up a situation. For some reason, a Montanist pastor that's a Trinitarian, like a Pentecostal, grabs you by the throat, takes you into a pool that you both believe in, by the way. You guys are both Christian. You both believe in this blue sense. You go into the water. He dips you in 3 times, fully immerses you, and says in the Trinitarian formula.
Yeah.
Sure, it was sinful for him to do that. It was not his place to do so. It was not his place to do so. Nevertheless, God, by his providence, provides the grace of salvation for that person in that moment. So the validity, although it is good in the sense that the grace is being provided, it is not good in the sense that this is not the proper way this should be done.
Absolutely.
All right, and I think you said you need to go. So
yeah, I need to go eat, watch a TV show, and then go to sleep. So I will see, because I'm supposed to be back here tomorrow morning, streaming twice actually tomorrow morning. Well, first stream is just going to be my Saturday morning stream. I don't know exactly what I'm going to talk about yet, but the second stream is going to be with Destiny's son, like the streamer.
Destiny has a son.
Yeah, and his son is like he has a YouTube channel and everything. So I'll be streaming with him tomorrow. Unius Initiative set it up. So yeah, Pine Sap is coming on too. So we're just going to hang out, react to some clips. Just kind of a chill stream.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, I mean, if you know where to find me, you know where to find me. Thank you for having me on, Christian.
Yeah,
I really do appreciate it.
Everybody check out SIIG.
Yeah.
Everybody add him on Discord and just flood him with like your worst question, your dumbest questions you can possibly think of. And I will talk to you guys all. I'll talk to you guys all later. Thank you, SIIIG. God bless.
Nah, it's all good, bro. God bless.